There is a story that has been told by people who know it to be true. Scott knows it to be true. But this story actually starts with Michele. She also knows it to be true. This is the story of Stephen. Stephen is a doctor whose calling is to care for people with one of the most frightening challenges they'll ever face in their life: cancer. When people tell the story of Stephen, they all tell it a little differently. But as it turns out, stories are all very much alike. Some have an end to the story, but many don't. That's what makes the story of Stephen fluid and alive. You see, if the story does not have an end, promise takes over. The future is in play. Hope is eternal, and so will be the story of Stephen. Michele met Stephen because she had to. Cancer. However, Michele had an immediate understanding. She was lucky to meet Stephen. It was almost like a certain destiny, a preordained arrangement. Fate, maybe. Unexplained intervention. Stephen, with skill and knowledge and experience and wisdom and kindness, pushed the threat away from Michele. He's kept the threat away, and that's no small feat. That's that thing that Stephen does. When Scott met cancer, they didn't get along very well. Michele knew cancer, and she knew Stephen. She knew what to do. Scott met Stephen. Stephen got Scott and cancer talking. But more than that, Stephen introduced Scott to comfort. You see, Scott had an overactive fear of doctors and nurses and needles, and, well, you get the idea. And as with Michele, Stephen, with understanding and integrity and capability and aptitude, pushed the threat away from Scott. While the Michele version and the Scott version of the story of Stephen do not have an end, some sadly do. This confluence is the remarkable part of all that's written on this page. The imprint of one man lives on through those stories that have not yet ended, lives no longer in threat. But never forget the imprint is just as alive with stories that have ended, families that move on bravely because they have to. They also have a role in the story of Stephen. Now the story of Stephen will whisper to others. Others who have not met all the characters in the story, others who don't know it yet but will come to the place in the story where their part goes. The happiness in the story of Stephen still hides in their hearts. They may not know it, but it's there. Michele and Scott and all the characters in the story of Stephen, past and present, have embraced that happiness. No longer worried about outcome, only reveling in the peace shared by the imprint of one man. Not a god, not a magician, just a man, but a special man with courage and calling. As time and Stephen move down the path, never forget it is our turn to share. Nebraska, as it turns out, is a place he shared with us. Nebraska, as it turned out, will now share with Washington. Nebraska, as it turned out, is an album by Bruce Springsteen. The album Nebraska, as it turns out, ends with the track entitled Reason to Believe. Fitting, don't you think? Just one more reason to believe in the story of Stephen. Good luck, Godspeed. We are blessed to know you and now call you friend.